My name is Clarence Vance, but everyone calls me Clay. I'm 72 years old, and I have lived right here in Atlanta, Georgia, ever since I married Estelle back in 1977. I retired after 35 years, working as a production supervisor at Magnolia Steelworks, one of the biggest regional auto parts suppliers. What I'm going to share today, man, is something I never imagined I'd tell anyone. But I feel like I need to get it off my chest. Maybe this will serve as a hinting for others my age who think they know the people they share their lives with. It all started on a chilly Tuesday in June of 2023. I was having my afternoon coffee sitting on the porch of our house in the Druid Hills neighborhood, watching the gray clouds promise a big Atlanta summer storm. Estelle had left earlier saying she was heading to her cardiologist appointment, just like she did every Tuesday and Thursday. After almost 5 decades together, we didn't talk like we used to. Truth be told, we barely spoke past good morning and good night, and we had been sleeping in separate rooms for over 10 years. She claimed it was because of my snoring, but I knew there was more to it. Still, we kept up appearances for the family, mainly for the grandkids. When the phone rang that afternoon, I had no idea that call would completely change my life. It was Miles, my 19-year-old grandson, with whom I've always been close. His voice sounded strange, shaky. "Pop, something's wrong. I need to tell you something, but you have to promise me you'll stay calm," he said. "Lord, son, talk to me. What happened?" I replied, feeling my blood pressure start to rise. "I saw Grandma pulling into the Peachtree Inn on Ponce de Leon Avenue, and she wasn't alone, Pop. She was with some guys in suits. I felt like someone had punched me in the gut. Estelle. My Estelle, at the Peachtree Inn. That motel was known all over the city. It couldn't be. Are you crazy, boy? Your grandmother is with the doctor right now," I replied, my voice cracking. "I'm sending you a picture, Pop. I just took it. Look at it," Miles insisted. When I opened the picture, my legs gave out. It was her, the same chin-length gray haircut I saw every morning at breakfast. The same brown purse she'd left the house with earlier. The same navy blue coat I'd given her for her birthday last year. Worse, I could even see the tag number on the red Chevy Malibu we shared. There was no way to deny it. But something didn't make sense. Estelle told me her doctor's appointment was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. How could she be in 2 places at the same time? "Miles, are you sure that picture is from today?" I asked, trying to find some explanation. "I just took it, Pop. I'm here on Ponce because I came to grab some school material, and I passed right by the motel. That's when I saw Grandma walking in." The world seemed to spin around me. In 48 years of marriage, I had never once suspected anything. Estelle had always been a serious woman, dedicated to her family, and a faithful church member. How could this be happening? Then I remembered. Sometimes Estelle left the car keys at home and took a taxi to her appointments. Could someone have taken her car? Was there any other explanation? "Stay calm, son. I'm going to figure this out," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. I hung up the phone and sat there for a few minutes, trying to gather my thoughts. That's when I recalled that sometimes on her appointment days, I would hear noises coming from the basement. Estelle always said it was the neighbor's cat getting in through the back window, but I was never convinced. Could someone be in the house? I got up, determined to find the truth. I went down the stairs to the basement, a place I rarely visited since I hurt my back about 5 years ago. The smell of dampness and the poor lighting made the environment even more sinister. And that's when I got the biggest scare of my life. Down there in the basement, sitting in an old rocking chair that had belonged to my mother, was her, or at least someone who looked exactly like Estelle. Same height, same gray haircut, even the posture was identical. She was facing away from me, calmly knitting, with large headphones that completely blocked out exterior sound. She swayed her head slightly, as if following some music. I was frozen for a moment, trying to understand what was going on. If Estelle was here, in the basement, then who the heck was at the motel that Miles photographed? Or had Miles been wrong, and the woman at the motel wasn't Estelle? Estelle, I called, but she didn't respond, likely because of the headphones. I approached slowly, still confused. Just as I was about to tap her shoulder, a sound from upstairs startled me. It sounded like the kitchen door. I quickly glanced up the stairs that led to the main floor and then back to the chair. The woman kept knitting, oblivious to my presence. I decided to go up and check the noise. My head was racing. Maybe it was just the wind creaking the doors of this old house. I crept up the stairs, trying not to make a sound, still trying to put the puzzle pieces together. I looked again at the photo Miles had sent me. There was no doubt. It was Estelle, or someone incredibly similar to her. The car's license plate was exactly ours, and the timestamp showed 2:15 p.m., which was less than 30 minutes ago. I was in the kitchen, looking at the picture, when something caught my attention. In the image, a small detail was visible on the woman's right wrist, a bracelet I'd given Estelle for our 45th wedding anniversary. A bracelet that, as far as I could remember, Estelle never took off. It was then that I remembered a strange conversation we had 2 years ago. We were having dinner, one of those rare moments when we still talked, when Estelle told me, far too casually, that she had discovered a distant cousin through one of those DNA ancestry tests that got popular a few years back. She seemed exceptionally upbeat about the discovery, which was odd, considering she was never very close to her family. I remember thinking it was curious, but I didn't give it much thought at the time. But what if it wasn't a cousin? What if it was someone even closer? My heart started pounding as that idea occurred to me. I needed to verify a theory that was beginning to form in my head. I went back down to the basement, more determined this time. The woman was still there, still knitting. I came up behind her and touched her shoulder. She jumped up, startled, quickly pulling off her headphones. "You scared me, Clay." "What are you doing down here?" she asked, her voice exactly like Estelle's. But there was something different in her eyes, a slight hesitation, a flicker of nervousness I didn't recognize in the woman I had shared almost 5 decades with. "Are you all right, Estelle? I thought you were at the doctor's," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, watching her every reaction. "Oh, yeah, I canceled the appointment. Dr. Owens had an emergency," she replied quickly. "I decided to stay home and get a head start on this blanket for Simone's birthday." Simone was our oldest granddaughter. Her birthday was in 2 months. Something wasn't right. Estelle always hated the basement. She said it was too damp and aggravated her arthritis. Why would she be knitting down here instead of in the living room like she always did? "And why did you come down here to knit?" "You always complain about the dampness," I challenged. "Oh, I didn't want to bother you with the noise of the needles. I know you like to watch your afternoon show," she replied, getting up from the chair. "Well, since you're here, I'll go upstairs and make us some tea. How about that?" She quickly moved past me, going up the stairs without looking back. I stood there, staring at the empty chair and the unfinished knitting. That's when I noticed that she wasn't wearing any bracelet on her right wrist. I was born in the upstate of South Carolina in 1953. I was the youngest of 5 brothers, the son of small farmers who grew tobacco and cotton. Life in the country was hard, especially in the winter, when the biting cold of the region hardened your hands so much you could barely hold your tools. My father, Theodore, was a rigid, old-school man who believed a boy only became a man after plenty of hard work and a good licking with a belt. My mother, Geneva, was the opposite, sweet and loving, always trying to soften my father's severity. When I was 16, in 1969, I just couldn't take that life anymore. I decided to try my luck in the city. With my mother's hidden blessing and a few dollars I'd saved up, I caught a Greyhound bus north to Atlanta, Georgia. I remember arriving at the station without knowing a soul, with a cardboard suitcase tied with a string, holding 2 changes of clothes and a handful of dreams. Atlanta scared and thrilled me at the same time. So many lights, so many cars, so many people rushing through the streets. It was a world completely different from the slow rhythm of the country. For the first few days, I stayed at a cheap boarding house downtown while looking for a job. It was hard at first. A country boy, no education past grade school, no references, knocking on door after door. After almost a month of searching, I finally landed a job as a janitor at Magnolia Steelworks. The work was heavy, but I was used to hard labor. I woke up at 4:30 in the morning to catch the first bus and got home after 8 o'clock at night, but I didn't care. For the first time in my life, I had my own money, earned with the sweat of my brow, without having to answer to my father. By 1972, at 19 years old, I'd been promoted to production assistant. The company was growing, along with the post-war boom that the country was experiencing at the time. I worked on the production line, making parts for the booming auto industry. It was during this time that I started taking night classes at a community college. I knew I needed an education if I wanted to keep moving up. Speaking of moving up, in 1975, at 22, I was promoted to junior supervisor. I was the youngest supervisor in the plant, something that filled me with pride. I remember calling my parents long distance to share the news. My mother wrote back a letter full of joy. My father, always a man of few words, only sent a "keep at it" scrawled in pencil in the corner of my mother's letter. It was around this time that I met Estelle. She worked in the administrative department at the steelworks, secretary to the plant manager. Unlike the other young women, Estelle had a serious, discreet manner. She didn't wear flashy makeup or participate in hallway gossip, always with her modest dresses and her hair neatly pinned up. I fell in love with her from the start. It took me 3 months to work up the nerve to ask her out. It was March of 1976. I remember it well because I had just bought my first car, a blue 1969 Ford Fairlane I paid off in 12 sweaty, hard-earned payments. I invited her to a movie downtown where they were showing a new Sidney Poitier film. She accepted, much to my surprise and joy. Our courtship was quick. In less than a year, we were engaged. And in July of 1977, at 24 years old, I married Estelle, who was 20 at the time. We rented a small house in the Decatur neighborhood and started our life together. They were difficult years, full of hard work and saving, but we were happy. At least, I thought we were. Soon after, in our first years of marriage, we realized our differences were bigger than we'd imagined during our courtship. I was a simple man, from humble roots, who valued hanging out with friends on the weekend, grilling barbecue on Sunday, and watching the Atlanta Falcons with a cold beer. Estelle was more reserved. She liked to read, watch foreign films, and go to art exhibits. When we were dating, those differences seemed complementary, even attractive. But in marriage, they became a source of friction. In 1979, 2 years after we married, our first child, Naya, was born. It was the happiest moment of my life. I was 26, and I felt like the most blessed man in the world when I held that small, fragile thing in my arms. Estelle also changed after Naya was born. She became sweeter, more patient. For a while, our differences seemed less important. The 1980s were years of hard work and professional growth for me. In 1982, I was promoted to senior supervisor at the steelworks, which meant a good raise. That same year, we bought our first house, a small bungalow in Midtown. And in 1983, when I was 30, our second child, Darius, was born. Now with 2 young children, life became more hectic. I worked more and more to provide for the family, while Estelle quit her job to dedicate herself to the kids. Despite all the country's difficulties at the time, the galloping inflation, the lines to buy meat, we managed to build a stable life. In 1985, with the finances a little better, we were able to fulfill a dream, enrolling Nia, who was 6, in a private school. Estelle insisted on this heavily. She said education was the greatest asset we could leave our children. And I agreed, although deep down I thought that education hadn't held me back that much. After all, I had reached supervisor without even finishing high school. It was also in 1985 that the massive 80s financial crisis hit the city hard. Many companies closed their doors, and there were thousands of victims of job loss. Our home fortunately was intact, but many colleagues at the steelworks lost everything. The factory stayed closed for almost a month. It was a difficult period, but the city recovered, as always happens after tragedies. By the end of that decade, in 1989, I earned another promotion, production manager. At 36, I coordinated over 200 employees and reported directly to the company's management. I bought my first new car, a metallic blue Chevy Cavalier with power steering and everything. I felt like I was on top of the world. With the financial improvement in 1990, we were able to buy the house where I still live, here in the Druid Hills neighborhood. A large house with 4 bedrooms, a yard, and even a small basement. Estelle was thrilled with the house. She said we would finally have space to host family and friends. We moved in July of that year, in the middle of summer. I remember it was hot as all get out, as we say down here, and we hauled the furniture under a blazing sun. The 1990s began with big changes in the country. The economic crisis wiped out our savings. Global competition caused many companies to close their doors. The steelworks where I worked also went through difficult times. There were layoffs and production cuts, but we managed to survive. Things were changing at home, too. Nia entered adolescence, and with it came the typical conflicts of that age. She was very much like her mother, studious, determined, and questioning. Darius, at 10, was more like me. He liked football, outdoor games, and struggled in school. My relationship with Estelle at that time was stable, but it no longer had the same passion as the beginning. We were more partners, journey mates, than a couple in love. We had common goals, mainly related to the children, but our personal lives followed increasingly separate paths. She had her book club and her church friends, and I had my football buddies and my Sunday fishing trips. We met for family dinners and sometimes went out together for the kids' events. It wasn't perfect, but it worked, or so I thought. In 1995, Nia, then 16, announced she wanted to study medicine. I worried about the costs, But I was also very proud. She would be the first person in the family, on both my side and Estelle's, to go to a 4-year university. Darius, on the other hand, continued to struggle in school. Teachers suggested he had an attention deficit. We took him to several specialists. We did what we could. It was also in 1995 that I started noticing changes in Estelle's behavior. She was more distant, more reserved. She spent more time away from home, saying they were church meetings or book club, but something felt strange. I didn't suspect anything romantic. After all, we had been together for almost 20 years. But I sensed she was hiding something. In 1998, Naya passed the entrance exam for medicine at Emory University. It was a huge celebration. I remember we hosted a barbecue for over 50 people in the backyard. Relatives I didn't even know showed up. That day I saw a glow of fulfillment in Estelle's eyes that I hadn't seen in a long time. She had achieved what she wanted so badly, seeing her daughter start college, something she never had the opportunity to do herself. In the year 2000, with the arrival of the new millennium, much changed in my professional life. The steelworks was bought by a foreign group, bringing new management methods and new technologies. A complete change in company culture. For me, at 47, it was a huge challenge to adapt. I saw older colleagues being laid off, replaced by young people fresh out of college with business and engineering degrees, speaking Spanish and using terms I barely understood. Speaking of college, that same year, Darius, defying all expectations, passed the entrance exam for physical education. He who always struggled academically found his calling in sports. It was a complete surprise to us. With both kids in college, the house became emptier and quieter. Estelle and I saw each other less and less. I spent more time at work trying to adapt to the changes and secure my place at the company. She got involved in volunteer work, in addition to her usual activities. We became almost two strangers sharing the same roof. In 2003, at 50 years old, I had a big scare, a minor heart attack. I didn't have serious after effects, but it was a warning. The doctor told me I needed to reduce stress, exercise, and change my diet. For the first time, I realized I wasn't a young man anymore. It was after that health scare that Estelle suggested we should sleep in separate rooms. She said my snoring had gotten worse, that she couldn't sleep well, and that it was affecting her blood pressure. At the time, I accepted without questioning too much. Looking back now, I realize it was the beginning of an even greater distance between us. In 2005, Nia graduated from medical school at 26. The following year, she married Julian, a colleague from her residency. I was 53 when I became a father-in-law, and in 2007, at 54, I became a grandfather for the first time when Simone, my first granddaughter, was born. Darius graduated in physical education in 2004 and quickly started working at gyms around the city. Unlike his sister, he didn't want to follow an academic career. He was always more practical. In 2006, at 23, he opened his own small gym in the North Druid Hills neighborhood, which quickly gained a loyal clientele. That same year, he met Tamara, a nutritionist who worked in the same building. Their courtship was fast, and they married in 2007, a few months after Simone was born. In 2008, when I was 55, Miles, Darius, and Tamara's son, was born. He was my second grandson. It was a period of great joy. Seeing the family grow and the kids settled gave meaning to all the struggle I faced in life. At work, things weren't going so well. The Steelworks' new management wanted increasingly greater results with lower and lower costs. The pressure was constant. In 2010, at 57, I had another health issue: high blood pressure that wouldn't be controlled even with medication. Doctors talked about chronic stress. That's when I started thinking about retirement. In 2012, the company offered a voluntary retirement program. After much thought and calculating, I decided to accept. I was 59 and had 43 years with the company. The severance package was good, and coupled with Social Security, it would be enough to maintain a reasonable lifestyle. It wouldn't be like before, of course, but we wouldn't go without. Telling Estelle the decision was harder than I imagined. She was visibly concerned about the finances. She asked about the medical insurance, how we would afford the house, and if we would have to cut back on expenses. I tried to reassure her, showing her the calculations I had made, explaining the severance pay. Still, she seemed uneasy. Now, thinking back, maybe that was the moment she started making other plans for her life. Plans that didn't include me. The first few months of retirement were strange. After more than 4 decades of waking up early, catching the bus, and keeping schedules, I suddenly found myself with nothing to do. I started spending more time at the community center, fishing more often, and meeting old colleagues for a drink. But I still felt an emptiness. Estelle also seemed increasingly distant. She spent a lot of time out of the house, involved with church work, craft classes, and her book club. When I suggested we do something together, a trip, a drive, she always had an excuse. She said she was tired, had commitments, or preferred to stay home. Our moments together were limited to mealtimes, and even then, often in silence. In 2014, Nia gave us another grandson, Elijah, and in 2016, Darius and Tamara had Jordan. I was 63, and I loved the energy of my small grandchildren. The house came alive again when they came to visit. Estelle also transformed in their presence. She became more joyful, lighter. It was as if the grandkids brought back the woman I fell in love with decades ago. It was in 2018, when I was 65, that Estelle started having regular doctor's appointments. At first, it was once a month, then every 2 weeks. The last year, it had increased to twice a week, always on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She said it was cardiac monitoring, that the doctor had found a mild arrhythmia, and it was just a precaution. I never questioned it. I trusted her completely, fool that I was. Now, going back to that Tuesday afternoon in June of 2023, when I saw the woman in the basement who seemed to be Estelle but wasn't wearing the bracelet, and then watched her go upstairs to make tea, something told me I needed to investigate further. I followed her to the kitchen, observing her every move. She prepared the tea with the same gestures as Estelle. She used the same amount of tea bags, moved around the kitchen with familiarity, but something was different. Estelle, remember that time we went to Miami Beach for our 30th anniversary? I asked, trying to test her memory. Of course. How could I forget? It was in 2007. We stayed at that charming hotel right near the water, she replied, promptly. The answer was correct. We really had gone to Miami Beach in 2007 for our 30th anniversary. But I still wasn't convinced. I needed to verify one more thing. And your pecan pie recipe, the one your mother taught you, what was the secret ingredient? She hesitated for an almost imperceptible moment before answering. Oh, it's using a little extra brown sugar instead of granulated, and letting the pecans toast in butter for at least 2 hours. Now I was sure. Estelle's pecan pie recipe had no secret involving extra brown sugar. She always used white sugar, and the only trick was adding a splash of bourbon vanilla to the filling. Whoever that woman in my kitchen was, she was not my Estelle. I tried to keep my composure. If I showed that I knew about the deception, I could be putting myself in danger. After all, I didn't know who this woman was, or what she wanted in my house. "The tea is almost ready. Do you want sugar or plain?" she asked, her back to me. "Sugar, as always," I replied, trying to sound normal. I sipped slowly, watching her. She maintained a polite smile, but her eyes betrayed nervousness. We talked trivialities for a few minutes, about the weather, about news on TV, until I decided to act. "I'm going to check the car. I think something is loose in the engine," I said, getting up from the table. "All right, let me know if you find the problem," she replied, seeming relieved that I was leaving. Instead of going to the garage, I went to the bedroom and grabbed my cell phone. I needed to call Estelle to confirm where she really was. I dialed her number, my heart pounding. The phone rang, and nothing. I tried again. Nothing. On the third attempt, it went to voicemail. Then I had an idea. I downloaded a family location sharing app we had for emergencies. It had been Darius's idea after my first heart attack. Everyone in the family, Estelle, me, the kids, had the app installed on their phones. I opened the application and searched for Estelle's location. To my surprise, the signal showed she was at home. Confused, I checked again. The dot was blinking right over our house. I slowly walked downstairs, thinking about what to do. Who was that woman? Why did she look so much like Estelle? And where was the real Estelle? I went back to the kitchen. The woman wasn't there. I looked out the window and saw her in the yard, apparently talking on the phone. She seemed agitated, gesticulating a lot. I tried to get closer to hear the conversation, but she saw me and quickly hung up the phone. "That was Nia," she said quickly. She wanted to know if we needed anything from the grocery store. I told her no. I nodded, pretending to believe her. Nia was on call at the hospital that day. She wouldn't call to ask about grocery shopping. Just then, my cell phone rang. It was Miles again. I answered, moving away a little. "Pop, is everything all right? Did you manage to talk to Grandma?" "No, son, I couldn't. But listen, are you still near the motel?" "I'm driving away now, but I'm still in the area." "Why? Can you see if the car is still there?" There was silence on the other end of the line. After a few seconds, Miles replied, "I can swing back by. I'll call you in 10 minutes. I hung up and went back near the woman, who was now watering the yard plants, just like Estelle did every afternoon. It was incredible how she knew our routine in such detail. "Miles is stopping by in a little while," I said, observing her reaction. She seemed tense for a moment, but quickly regained her composure. "That's wonderful. He hasn't visited in a while. I'll prepare the peach cobbler he loves so much." Another error. Miles's favorite dessert was chocolate cake with walnuts, his mother's recipe. Estelle never made a mistake about that. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. I feigned normalcy while my brain raced. Who was this woman? How did she know so much about our family? And more importantly, where was the real Estelle? My phone rang again. It was Miles. "Pop, the car is still there in the Peachtree Inn parking lot. And there's more." I asked at the front desk, pretending to be confused. "You know, I said I was supposed to meet my aunt there." "A woman with short gray hair?" The receptionist confirmed she's in room 16 with a man in a blue suit. She said the regular client comes every Tuesday and Thursday. I felt a knot in my stomach. Regular client, Tuesdays and Thursdays, the same days as the supposed doctor's appointments. How long had this been going on? Miles, don't do anything. Don't go in there. Don't try to talk to her. Just go home and wait for my call. Do you understand? Yes, Pop. But what about you? Is everything really okay? Yes, son. I just need to figure some things out here. I'll call you later. I hung up the phone and went back inside the house. The woman was in the kitchen again, now separating ingredients for a dessert. She seemed so natural, so at ease, as if she had truly lived there for decades. I watched her for a few moments, trying to understand who she could be. That's when I noticed something on the kitchen counter that I hadn't seen before. A small woman's wallet. It wasn't Estelle's. She used a larger brown leather purse that I had given her years ago. I approached casually, and while she had her back to me, mixing the batter, I grabbed the wallet and slipped it into my pocket, trying not to make a sound. I need to grab a tool from the garage, I said, leaving quickly. Once alone in the garage, I opened the wallet with trembling hands. Inside I found an ID card. The picture was of someone very similar to Estelle, but the name was different. Elara Rhodes. The date of birth was the same as Estelle's, May 15th, 1957. That explained the impressive resemblance. They were twins. But how was that possible? Estelle never mentioned having a twin sister. She only spoke of one brother, Marcus, who lived in Charlotte, North Carolina, and whom we rarely saw. I continued to search through the wallet. I found some bank transfer receipts, all from an account in Estelle's name to an account in Elara's name. The amounts were always the same, $40, and the dates matched the Tuesdays and Thursdays of the last few months. There was also a handwritten note in handwriting I recognized as Estelle's. Emergency. Needed to leave earlier. Clay is on the porch. Use the headphones as agreed. I'll be back before 5 o'clock. Don't go down to the basement. E. My heart raced. Elara could only be the E on the ID. The Clay was me, and the other E would be Estelle. So that was it. Estelle was paying her twin sister, a sister I didn't even know existed, to stay at home while she went out to the motel with other men. The idea was so absurd, so painful, I could barely process it. I went back inside the house, my head spinning. I needed to confront that woman, Elara, and discover the whole truth. But when I entered the kitchen, she wasn't there. I heard noises coming from the basement. I crept down the stairs, trying not to make a sound. Elara was in the basement, apparently looking for something in a hurry. She was opening drawers, rummaging through old boxes, looking desperate. Looking for this? I said, holding up the wallet I had found. She spun around abruptly, her eyes wide with fear. For a moment, she was paralyzed, like a cornered animal. Then, to my surprise, her expression shifted. Fear gave way to something darker, more calculated. I knew this was going to happen eventually, she said, in a voice that no longer tried to imitate Estelle's. It was deeper, harsher. You shouldn't have found out this way. Who are you? And where is Estelle? I asked, keeping my distance. I'm Elara, Estelle's twin sister, and she is exactly where your grandson saw her, at the Peachtree Inn, doing what she does every Tuesday and Thursday, for almost 2 years now. I felt like I had been punched again, even with the evidence. Hearing it out loud was devastating. Why? Why would she do this? Elara let out a dry laugh. Money. Why else would it be? Your wife has a steady clientele of middle-aged executives who pay very well for a few hours with a discreet, experienced lady. Turns out there are men who like that type. The vulgarity with which she spoke of the situation disgusted me. I couldn't associate that description with the Estelle I knew, or thought I knew, for almost 5 decades. And what part do you play in all this? The easy part. I stay here, pretending to be her while she works. I earn $40 a day for it. It's not much, but it helps with the bills. How? How did you two meet? Estelle never told me about a twin sister. Alara sat down in the old rocking chair, seeming more relaxed now that the truth was coming out. We met a little over 2 years ago because of one of those ancestry DNA tests. I always knew I was adopted, but I didn't know I had a twin sister. When the test showed an almost perfect genetic match, the company put us in touch. 2 years, I muttered, remembering the distant cousin Estelle mentioned finding around that time. At first, we met secretly. While you were at work, she told me about your life, about how unhappy she was, about how she wanted to save money to leave this house and start over. Every word was like a knife in my chest. Estelle, unhappy, wanting to run away. After so many years, so many struggles together, so many shared moments. Was the motel plan her idea or yours? I asked, my voice nearly breaking. Hers, of course. I just accepted the easier role, staying here, knitting while she, well, you know. At that moment, something strange happened in Alara's eyes. A look that seemed untrustworthy. There was more she wasn't telling. Why did she choose Tuesdays and Thursdays? And why hasn't she run away yet, if that's what she wanted? Tuesdays and Thursdays are the days when executives from a company in Charlotte, North Carolina, come to Atlanta for meetings, regular clients. As for running away, well, she's saving money. She already has over $50,000 in a secret account. When she reaches $80,000, she's going to disappear. At least that's what she told me. $50,000. A fortune saved behind my back, through a type of work I would never have imagined. The pain of the betrayal was almost physical. And what do you gain from this besides the $40 a day? Alara smiled, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm just helping my sister. We're blood, aren't we? Something in the way she spoke put me on alert. There was more to this story, much more. When is Estelle coming back today? I asked, trying to sound casual. Around 5 o'clock this afternoon, as usual. She goes to the hair salon after her appointment. That way, you can have dinner together like a normal couple. Normal couple. The irony of that phrase hit me hard. Nothing in our life was normal. Apparently, I'd been living a lie for at least 2 years. And what are you going to do now? Alara asked, sounding genuinely curious. Are you going to confront her? Are you going to file for divorce? I don't know yet, I answered honestly. If I were you, I'd take half of that money she hid and disappear. Start a new life, just like she's planning to do. I looked at her suspiciously. Why was she giving me advice? I'm going upstairs to wait for Estelle, I said, heading toward the stairs. That's when I felt a strong blow to the back of my head, and everything went dark. When I regained consciousness, the first thing I felt was a throbbing pain in the back of my head. I tried to move, but realized I was lying in a hospital bed with tubes and wires connected to my body. The bright white light made me blink several times until I could focus my vision. You're awake, I heard a familiar voice say. Slowly turning my head, I saw Naya, my daughter, standing next to the bed. She was wearing scrubs. She was probably on call at the hospital when they brought me in. On the other side of the bed, I saw Estelle, or was it Alara? In the confusion of the moment, I couldn't tell. Dad, thank God, Nia said, holding my hand. You gave us a huge scare. What? What happened? I asked, my voice hoarse and weak. They found you collapsed at the bottom of the basement stairs, Nia explained. Our neighbor, Mr. Hayes, heard a loud noise and went to check. The back door was unlocked. He found you unconscious and called the ambulance. I looked at the woman on the other side of the bed. Her eyes were red, as if she had cried a lot. She was wearing the bracelet I had given Estelle. It was her, the real Estelle. "How long have I been here?" I asked. "Almost 3 hours," Naya replied. "You have a concussion, but nothing too serious. We did a CT scan, and there's no internal bleeding, thank God. But you'll need to stay under observation tonight." 3 hours. So it was around 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon. Estelle must have returned from the motel and discovered what happened. Or did Ilara attack me and then run away? My head was still fuzzy. "What happened, Clay?" Estelle asked, her voice shaky. "How did you fall down the stairs?" I looked at her, searching for signs of lying or guilt. But all I saw was genuine concern. Either she was an extraordinary actress, or she really didn't know what had happened. "I didn't fall," I said, my voice firmer now. "Someone attacked me." Naya and Estelle exchanged worried glances. "Attacked? What do you mean, Dad? Was someone in the house?" Naya asked. I decided it was time for the truth, no matter how painful. "Yes, your aunt was here." "Aunt? What aunt?" Naya looked confused. "Your mother's twin sister, Ilara." Estelle's face paled drastically. She leaned on the edge of the bed to keep from falling. "What are you talking about, Dad? Mom doesn't have a twin sister," Naya insisted. "Yes, she does," I said, looking directly at Estelle. "And you knew about it, didn't you, Estelle? You found her 2 years ago with that DNA test, and since then, you've had an interesting arrangement. She stays at home, pretending to be you, while you go to work at the Peachtree Inn motel." Naya covered her mouth, shocked. Estelle looked like she was about to faint at any moment. "What are you talking about?" Estelle asked. But her voice didn't have the same conviction. "Miles saw you today, entering a motel with a man in a suit. He even took a picture. Meanwhile, you were home knitting in the basement. Only it wasn't you. It was Ilara. I found her wallet. I saw the receipts for the $40 transfers you make Tuesdays and Thursdays. I even saw the note you left her today." Tears began to stream down Estelle's face, but she remained silent. "Is that true, Mom?" Nia asked, her voice cracking. Estelle closed her eyes for a moment, as if gathering courage. When she opened them again, there was a look of resignation I had never seen before. "Yes, it's true. I have a twin sister, Ilara. We were separated at birth. My parents kept me and gave her up for adoption. I didn't know about this until 2 years ago when I took that DNA test Simone gave me as a Mother's Day gift. Why didn't you ever tell us?" Naya asked, visibly moved. At first, because I was in shock. And then, because Ilara and I started something that I knew was wrong. "The motel arrangement?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and sadness I had never experienced before. Estelle nodded, unable to meet my eyes. She was going through financial hardship. She lost her job during the pandemic. She was almost evicted. We got closer, and she gave me the idea. "The idea to become a prostitute?" I asked, unable to contain the bitterness in my voice. Nia let out a choked sob. "It wasn't exactly like that," Estelle defended herself. "At first, it was only supposed to be once. An acquaintance of her brother, a businessman, offered a lot of money to spend an afternoon with an older woman. I refused, of course, but Ilara insisted. She said it would be easy, that no one would ever know." "And you just accepted it?" I asked, incredulous. "No, I refused several times. But then, Clay, you had that second heart issue, and the cost of medication went up so much. Our Social Security barely covered the basic expenses. I was desperate. It was true, that our financial situation wasn't the best. With rising inflation and health expenses, we often ended the month in the red. But I never imagined Estelle would feel so pressured as to do something like this. The first time was awful, she continued. I felt dirty, humiliated. I swore I'd never do it again. But when I saw the money, $700 for just a few hours, I thought about how many months of medication that would cover. 700? I repeated, surprised by the value. For one time, yes. And soon, the businessman recommended me to other friends. A small group of regular clients formed, all middle-aged men from other cities who came to Atlanta for business. Discreet, respectful, if I can even use that word. And Alara? What was her role in all this? I asked, trying to grasp the full extent of the plan. At first, she just introduced me to the clients. She took a commission. Then when we realized we needed a way for you not to notice my absence, the idea came up for her to stay at home in my place. For $40 a day, she accepted. Twice a week for 2 years. I calculated mentally. That's more than 100 days, over $80,000 in total earnings. Where is all that money, Estelle? She lowered her eyes. I have a secret account, but it's not that full. Subtracting what I pay Alara, what I spend on clothes, hair, the hotel room, and what I send to help our children without you knowing, there's about $50,000 left. Help our children? Nia asked, surprised. What are you talking about, Mom? Darius's gym was going under last year. He didn't want to tell you to keep you from worrying. I helped him with a $10,000 loan. And you, Nia, when you needed that money for Elijah's experimental treatment, remember? You said the medical insurance finally covered it, but it didn't. I paid for it. Nia looked shocked. Mom, I don't know what to say. The money is dirty, daughter. I know that. But it helped our family. It helped your father get the medication he needs. It helped your brother save his business. It helped your son get the right treatment. It was too much information to process at once. Part of me wanted to scream, kick Estelle out of the house, and never look at her again. Another part, the one that remembered the young woman I fell in love with almost 50 years ago, wanted to understand, forgive, and find a way forward. And today, I finally asked, what happened today that caused me to be attacked? I don't know, Estelle replied, seeming sincerely confused. When I got home, the ambulance was already there taking you away. Mr. Hayes said they found you collapsed on the basement stairs. I thought it was an accident, that you had slipped. It was Alara, I said with certainty. I confronted her in the basement. I showed her I had discovered everything. In a moment of distraction, she hit me from behind. I can't believe it, Estelle murmured. Why would she do that? Because she's not in this just for the money, as far as I can tell. There's something more. Just then, the room door was opened and Miles walked in, accompanied by a police officer. My grandson looked like he had been crying. He rushed to my bedside and hugged me gently. Pop, I'm so glad you're okay. I was so worried when Darius called me. I'm fine, son. Just a bump on the head. The police officer approached. Mr. Vance, I'm Detective Reynolds from the Homicide Division. We need to talk about what happened at your house today. Homicide? Nia asked, alarmed. But my father is alive. It was just a fall. It wasn't a fall, Doctor, the officer replied, who apparently knew Nia from the hospital. We found a hammer with traces of blood in the basement, and there are signs of a struggle. It was an attempted homicide. The room fell silent for a few seconds as everyone assimilated the gravity of the situation. Furthermore, the officer continued, Images from the neighbor's security camera show a woman quickly leaving the back of the house just a few minutes before Mr. Hayes found Mr. Vance. And what's most interesting, this woman is practically identical to Mrs. Estelle. All eyes turned to Estelle. "It's my twin sister," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Ilara Rhodes." The detective nodded, writing something in his notebook. "We've already issued an alert for her arrest, but we need to understand the full context. Mr. Vance, when you're up to it, I'd like you to give a formal statement." "I can talk right now," I replied. "The sooner we resolve this, the better." The officer asked Nia and Miles to give us a moment alone. After they left, I detailed everything I had discovered. The arrangement between the sisters, the money, the attack. Estelle, in tears, confirmed the story, except for the part about the attack, which she claimed not to know about. "How long exactly have you known each other, Mrs. Vance?" the detective asked. "We met in person in March of 2021, but the DNA test confirming our relationship was in February of that year. And before that, I had never heard of her. Never. I think my parents wanted to spare the family the scandal. At the time, in the early 50s, being a single mother was frowned upon. My parents adopted only one, me, and the other was sent to an orphanage." "I understand. And this business arrangement of yours began how long after you met?" Estelle blushed intensely. "About 3 months later. As I said at first, it was only going to be once." "Do you have any idea why your sister would try to kill your husband?" Estelle shook her head, seeming genuinely confused. "It makes no sense. She was making money from our arrangement. Why would she stop that?" "Maybe she wanted more," I suggested, remembering the conversation in the basement. There was something strange about the way she spoke, the way she looked at me. When I asked what she gained from all this, she answered evasively. "We will investigate all the possibilities," the detective assured us. "For now, Mrs. Vance, you are free to go, but do not leave the city. We will need more statements in the coming days." After the detective left, we stayed in silence for long minutes. I looked at the ceiling. Estelle looked at her own hands. Almost 5 decades together, and it felt like we didn't know each other anymore. "What's going to happen now, Clay?" she finally asked, her voice barely audible. "I don't know, Estelle. I honestly don't know. I spent that night in the hospital under observation. Naya used her influence to stay in the room with me, even outside visiting hours. Estelle went home, escorted by Darius. No one wanted her to be alone in case Ilara decided to reappear. The next morning, I was discharged. The CT scan showed no complications, just a mild concussion that required rest. Darius came to pick me up and took me to his house. Both he and Naya thought it best that I didn't return home immediately, not only for security reasons, but also to give me time to process everything that had happened. Darius's house in the Buckhead neighborhood was spacious and comfortable. The gym was doing well again, apparently. Tamara, my daughter-in-law, received me with affection, prepared a room for me, and treated me like glass. Miles and Jordan, my grandchildren, were being kept partially in the dark about the more sordid details of the story. They only knew that their grandmother had a twin sister no one knew about, and that she had attacked me for reasons that were still unclear. Over the next 2 days, Detective Reynolds kept us informed about the investigation. Ilara had not returned to her apartment in the Bankhead neighborhood. She hadn't used credit cards or made calls from her cell phone. She seemed to have disappeared. Estelle's story matched up in many places. The DNA test had indeed been conducted in February of 2021, and there were records of regular bank transfers to Ilara since June of that year. The Peachtree Inn confirmed that Ms. Elena the name Estelle used there, was a regular client, always accompanied by middle-aged men, usually on Tuesdays and Thursdays. On the third day after the incident, we were all gathered at Darius's house. Me, him, Tamara, Nia, and Julian, her husband. That's when Detective Reynolds called him with the news. "We found Ilara Rhodes," he announced. "She was arrested trying to board a bus bound for Central America at the Tapachula terminal." "Did she confess to the attack?" Darius asked, who had answered the call on speakerphone. "Yes, she confessed to everything. And there's more. We found a significant amount of cash on her, fake documents, and some personal items belonging to Mrs. Vance, including jewelry and the deed to your house." I felt a chill. So that was the plan. Kill me, somehow eliminate Estelle, and assume her identity. It seemed absurd, worthy of a suspense movie, but reality sometimes surpasses fiction. "Bring Estelle here," I asked Darius. "We need to hear this together." An hour later, Estelle arrived. She looked defeated, aged. In just 3 days, she seemed to have aged 10 years. We all sat down in the living room, and Detective Reynolds, who came in person, told us what Ilara had revealed during the interrogation. According to her statement, the plan was never just to earn $40 a day to substitute for her sister, the detective explained. From the beginning, Ilara planned to assume Estelle's identity permanently. "How so?" Estelle asked, shocked. She claimed that, upon discovering she had a twin sister with a stable life, a husband, children, grandchildren, her own house, everything she never had, she began to feel envy. According to her, you were separated at birth, but you had all the opportunities while she went from orphanage to orphanage, then from foster home to foster home. Estelle began to cry silently. "I didn't know. I had no idea she existed until the DNA test." "She knows that," the detective continued, "but she said she still couldn't help but feel that life was unfair. While she spent days in your house pretending to be you, she began to believe she deserved that life, that it was her right." "And her plan was to kill me?" I asked. "Yes. According to her, the initial idea was to wait for you to die naturally, given your age and heart problems. But when she realized you had discovered the plan, she panicked and attacked you impulsively." "And as for Estelle?" Naya asked. The detective nodded gravely. "The plan was to eliminate Mrs. Vance too eventually, likely by taking her to an isolated location. And, well, you understand. With both of you gone, and given the perfect physical resemblance, she believed she could permanently assume Estelle's identity. She had been practicing your handwriting, studying details of your life, your memories." A heavy silence fell over the room. It was such a macabre, calculated plan that it seemed impossible. It could have been planned by someone we knew, however briefly. "She didn't seem like that kind of person," Estelle murmured. "To me and everyone else, she seemed like someone who had just had bad luck in life and needed money." "Appearances are deceiving," the detective commented. "Generally, people like that are very good at hiding their true intentions." "What happens to her now?" I asked. "She will be charged with attempted homicide, in addition to conspiracy, identity fraud, and other related crimes. The sentence could be up to 20 years, depending on how the case is judged." After the detective left, we were silent again. There was an elephant in the room that no one wanted to address. What would happen to Estelle? She hadn't tried to kill me, but she had betrayed my trust in a way I never would have imagined. "You two need to talk," Naya finally said, looking at me and her mother. "Alone." The others agreed and left us in the living room. For the first time since the hospital, Estelle and I were alone. "Clay?" she started, but I interrupted her. "Why, Estelle? Why do this? Almost 50 years together and you choose this?" She lowered her eyes, her hands trembling in her lap. I don't know how to explain it well. When I met Alara, it was like meeting a part of myself I never knew existed. And when she suggested that first job, something inside me broke. As if I suddenly realized I had lived my entire life following the rules, doing what was expected of me, and never really living. And sleeping with strangers for money, that's living? I asked, unable to hide the disgust in my voice. It's not that. It's the feeling of power, of control. Those important executive men were paying me small fortunes for a few hours. Me, a woman over 60, who her own husband barely even looked at anymore. It was liberating, in a way. Her words hit me like daggers. It was true that our marriage had cooled off a long time ago, that we barely touched or talked anymore. But I never imagined Estelle felt so invisible. You could have talked to me, I said, feeling a lump in my throat. You could have told me how you felt. I tried, Clay, so many times, but you were always busy, or tired, or watching TV. We became two strangers living in the same house, and when the possibility of earning all that money came up, of helping our children without needing to worry you, I couldn't resist. And now what do you want to happen? Estelle looked me in the eyes for the first time. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. What I did was wrong on so many levels. Not just the betrayal, but putting you at risk, letting that woman into our house. Our family was almost destroyed because of me. I got up and walked to the window. Outside, the Atlanta sky was gray, threatening rain, just like my heart. I don't know if I can get over this, Estelle. I don't know if I can look at you and not think about what happened, about what you did. I understand, she replied, her voice breaking. If you want a divorce, I won't contest it. The house can be yours. The money I saved, well, it's yours now. I used it badly, but maybe you can use it for good. I don't want your money, I said more sharply than I intended. I don't know what I want, truth be told. I just know I need time to think, to process all of this. Time? She repeated, as if the word held a special meaning. We don't have much of that left, Clay. At our age, how much time do we still have? It was a pertinent question. With my heart problems, who knew how much longer I had? Was it worth spending those final years alone? Bitter? Or was there a possibility, however small, of rebuilding something with the woman who, despite everything, was still the mother of my children, the grandmother of my grandkids, the companion of almost half a century? I'm not going to make any decision now, I finally said. I'll stay at Darius's house for the time being. Then we'll see. Estelle nodded, her eyes teary. Where will I go? I can't stay in the house alone, not after what happened. Stay with Nia for now. Give it some time. She got up, grabbed her purse, and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned back to me. Clay, regardless of what you decide, I want you to know one thing. Despite everything I did, all my mistakes, I never stopped loving you. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just watched as she walked out of the room, carrying the weight of her mistakes, and perhaps the end of our marriage on her shoulders. In the weeks that followed, Alara's case moved forward in the justice system. She was formally charged with attempted homicide in addition to other minor crimes. The evidence was overwhelming. The hammer with my blood and her fingerprints. The neighbors' cameras showing her escape, her detailed confession. There was no doubt about her guilt. As for Estelle, she was not formally charged with any crime. Although solicitation is technically illegal, the police chose not to pursue that line, given the peculiar nature of the case and the fact that she herself had been nearly a victim of a serious crime. The months passed. I continued staying at Darius's house, helping with the grandkids, filling my days with small projects around the house, walks in the nearby park, and reading. I visited doctors to monitor my recovery from the concussion, and also to review my cardiac treatment. Curiously, my health improved. The doctor said maybe it was because I was walking more and eating better. Tamara was strict about healthy diets. Estelle and I saw each other occasionally at family gatherings, birthdays, and Sunday lunches. We were cordial with each other, but distant. She seemed thinner, more fragile. She had started therapy, Nia told me. Christmas was approaching. It would be the first since the incident, the first we would spend apart in almost 50 years. Darius and Nia were planning a joint celebration with all the family members gathered. That's when I received the call that would change everything again. It was Detective Reynolds. His voice sounded grave on the phone. "Mr. Vance, I have news about Alara Rhodes," he said. "I believe you'd like to know personally before the information reaches your family through other means." "What happened?" I asked, feeling an inexplicable tightness in my chest. "She was found dead in her cell this morning. Suicide. Apparently, she left a letter." I slowly sat down in the nearest chair. I felt no joy at the news, only a deep sadness for all that tragedy. "What kind of letter?" I asked after a moment of silence. "A full confession and some additional information that, well, is relevant to you and your family." "What information?" "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone. Would it be possible for you to come down to the precinct? Your wife, ex-wife, pardon me, is also being contacted." I agreed to go. Darius drove me to the homicide precinct downtown. We arrived almost at the same time as Nia and Estelle. We gathered in Detective Reynolds' office, an austere environment with gray walls and functional furniture. "Thank you for coming," the detective began. After we were all seated, he continued. "As I mentioned to Mr. Vance, Alara Rhodes was found deceased this morning. She used bedsheets to, well, you understand. The medical examiner estimates it occurred during the early hours of the morning." Estelle let out a small sob. Despite everything, she was her sister, the only sister she had discovered in adulthood. "She left this letter," the detective continued, showing an envelope. "It's addressed to all of you, actually. According to our protocol, we need to read the contents first to check for information relevant to the investigation. And there is, indeed, relevant information." "What information?" Nia asked, holding her mother's hand. The detective adjusted his glasses and picked up the letter. "I'll only read the most important fragments. She begins by asking for forgiveness from everyone, especially Mr. Vance, for the attempted homicide. She says she was dominated by envy and desperation." He turned the page and continued. "But there's an important revelation here. According to Alara, she and Mrs. Vance are not biological twin sisters." "What do you mean?" Estelle questioned, bewildered. "She states here that the result of the DNA test was falsified. Alara worked as a lab assistant at the clinic that did the test. When she saw the physical resemblance between you, she became obsessed. She researched your family history, discovered you were looking for distant relatives, and manipulated the results to make it look like there was genetic compatibility." "Is that even possible?" I asked, shocked. "According to our experts, yes, it is possible. We are investigating the clinic and have already found irregularities in the procedures, but the resemblance between them is incredible," commented Darius, who was also present. "How would that be possible if they weren't related?" "It happens, son," I replied, remembering cases I had heard of. "They say everyone has 7 lookalikes in the world. In their case, the resemblance was impressive. But there were subtle differences that I noticed when I discovered the deception. the shape of the ears, the way she smiled. The detective nodded and continued reading. Elara also confesses that she planned everything from the beginning. She saw Mrs. Vance's photo in the clinic's system. She noticed the exceptional resemblance and decided to approach her. The original plan was already to assume your identity, even before meeting you in person. Estelle was in shock. The whole thing was a lie. She was never my sister. According to this confession, no, she was just a lonely, mentally disturbed woman who saw an opportunity to have the life she always dreamed of. And I fell for it like a fool, Estelle murmured. I believed her. I trusted her. I let her into my house, into my life. Don't blame yourself, Mom, Nia comforted her. She was very convincing, and the physical resemblance is truly incredible. The detective picked up another paper. We did a preliminary check of Elara's history. She had previous police encounters for minor fraud and one case of stalking. In 2015, she was briefly admitted to a psychiatric clinic with a diagnosis of personality disorder. There are also records of other attempts to get close to people she physically resembled, although none as elaborate as this one. The revelation that Elara was not actually Estelle's sister changed everything. In a way. It didn't alleviate the betrayal Estelle had committed, of course, but it put the entire situation in a new perspective. She had been manipulated by a dangerous, mentally unstable person who had planned every step carefully. What happens now? I asked the detective. From a police standpoint, the case is closed. Elara was the only suspect, and with her passing, the criminal process will be archived. As for the rest, well, that's up to you all to decide. We left the precinct in silence. The Atlanta sky was clear that day, a contrast to the storm of emotions we all felt. Darius suggested we all go back to his house to talk. On the way, I kept thinking about everything that had happened in the last 6 months, the betrayal, the discovery, the violence, and now, this final revelation that closed a cycle of lies. At Darius's house, we all sat down on the deck that overlooked the yard. Tamara prepared some tea and left us alone, me, Estelle, Nia, and Darius. It was time for a frank family conversation. What do you want to do? Nia asked, looking at me and Estelle. About the marriage, the house, everything. Estelle sighed deeply before speaking. I know I messed up badly, Clay. What I did is unforgivable, no matter the circumstances. If you want to proceed with the divorce, I will understand. I looked at the woman with whom I had shared almost 50 years of life. We had been together since our early 20s. We raised children. We watched grandchildren be born. We went through difficult times and immense joys. And now, in the twilight of our lives, we faced a crossroads. I've thought a lot these months, I finally said, about us, about what happened to our marriage. It didn't happen suddenly, that we became strangers to each other. It was a slow process, year after year, while we were busy with work, with kids, with the worries of everyday life. Estelle nodded, her eyes teary. What you did was wrong on many levels, I continued. But I also recognized my part. I withdrew emotionally. I stopped seeing you as a woman, as a companion. I lived on autopilot, without realizing you were unhappy, unsatisfied. That doesn't justify what I did, she replied. I should have talked, insisted, sought help, not resorted to that. No, it doesn't justify it, I agreed. But it helps to understand. And understanding is the first step toward forgiving. A meaningful silence settled between us. The word forgive floated in the air, like a possibility none of us had truly considered until then. Do you think, Darius began hesitantly, do you think you could try again? Not like before, of course, but a new start? You're in your 70s, not your 20s. Maybe it's worth trying. I looked at Estelle. She seemed so fragile, so remorseful. But I also saw there the young woman I fell in love with. The dedicated mother who raised our children. The loving grandmother who spoiled our grandkids. It won't be easy, I said. There's a lot of pain, a lot of distrust to overcome. I know, Estelle replied. But if you're willing to try, Clay, I promise I will do everything to win back your trust, to make us happy again, even if it's in a different way. In the months that followed, Estelle and I began a slow process of getting closer. First, joint therapy sessions, then casual outings, a coffee, a lunch, a movie. We talked like we hadn't talked in decades, openly discussing feelings, fears, and expectations. I returned to our house in the Druid Hills neighborhood in March of 2024, 9 months after the incident. We slept in separate rooms, but this time it wasn't because of distance. It was out of respect for the time each of us needed. Little by little, we rebuilt our intimacy, rediscovering each other. It wasn't, and still isn't, an easy path. There are days when the memory of what happened comes back with full force, when I look at Estelle and wonder if I really know her. But there are also wonderful days when I feel we are closer than ever, united by a deeper understanding of what it means to love someone for life with all their imperfections. In August of 2024, we held a small ceremony to renew our vows. Just the children, the grandchildren, and a few close friends. It wasn't a total reset. Too much water had passed under the bridge to pretend everything was as before. It was, instead, a commitment for the time we have left, whatever that may be. Now, in September of 2025, we are heading toward our 48th wedding anniversary. I'm 72. Estelle is 68. Experience has taught us that no marriage is perfect, that people make mistakes, some small, others gigantic, and that true love is not about never falling, but about the courage to get up and keep walking together, even after the most painful fall. If someone had asked me 2 years ago if I would forgive a betrayal like the one I suffered, I would probably have said no, that there are limits to forgiveness, that, once crossed, allow no return. But life has a peculiar way of surprising us, of showing us that we are stronger and more capable of forgiving than we imagined. I don't know how much time we still have together. At 72, with my heart issues, every day is a gift. But I know that whatever that time is, I want to spend it with the woman who, despite all the mistakes and difficulties, I chose to love almost half a century ago and choose to love again every single day. The incident with the false twin sister, as painful as it was, ended up being a turning point in our lives. It forced us to confront truths we had been ignoring for years, to recognize that our marriage had become an empty shell, a pretense of what it once was. And paradoxically, it was that breaking point that allowed us to rebuild something new, something more honest and perhaps stronger. As we say in the South, after the worst storms, the sky always opens up bluer. And that's how I see our life now. A sky opening up, blue and promising, after a tempest that almost destroyed us. My grandson, Miles, who was a fundamental piece in this story, is now 19 and starting law school. He always tells me that it was because of what happened to us that he decided to pursue that career. He wants to help people find justice, to navigate the difficult moments of life. I feel proud watching him transform a painful experience into something positive. And as for Alara, sometimes I catch myself thinking about her, that disturbed woman who entered our lives like a hurricane. I feel a profound sadness for someone who lived and died chasing a lie, trying to steal the lives of others instead of building her own. May she find peace wherever she is. Life is too short for us to waste it with eternal grudges. We must know how to forgive others and ourselves and move forward, taking lessons even from the most painful experiences. That is the wisdom my 72 years brought me after going through the most violent storm I ever faced. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.